Yes people, welcome back to the channel for a brand new video where today we're going to be discussing England and more specifically what's the reason behind us not winning a trophy at a major competition since 1966. But before we get into that, and there is a lot to cover, I can assure you, make sure that if you're new around here and you do enjoy football content, consider subscribing. Make sure you like the video as well if you enjoy it, of course, and don't forget as always to click the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. It would be rude not to, after all. Also, make sure you go and check out my socials, which are in the description below. But now that is done, let's talk football. So yes, England. It's not been easy to watch at times. Usually we crash out of a tournament in an earlier stage than we should. We moan about them for 2 years, but then 2 months leading up to the tournament, we hype them up again just to be left disappointed and fall at the last hurdle. That pretty much sums up the life cycle of an England fan, but why is it that it's happened for so long? I think it's fair to say it's not been an ability issue when it comes to England's disappointment in tournaments. Some of the players we've had in the last 30 years has been some of the best talent in the world. Most of them competing in the Premier League at the highest level, and the standard of player in general has been very good. So why is it that that is still not enough? Although not an ability issue as such, I think we can all agree that big names and important players have not lived up to the hype or the standards they set themselves at club level when pulling on an England shirt. I think it's more of a mental problem, to be honest. Like I said, it's not necessarily ability related. However, there is definitely cases where big names and important players have not performed and turned up at major tournaments at vital moments. And I think that's a big thing too, but that's not directly related to their ability, but maybe more their mindset, because they're producing the goods at club level. However, when they pull on that England shirt, the standards are not normally the same. So there's been a lot of years since 1966. So I think it's important to look at specific eras or specific times in particular. So for example, going into the 2010 World Cup with Fabio Capello in charge, he's won a lot at club level, a highly respected manager, moved into international management itself, but was very stubborn in his approach with that England team. He was known for playing 4-4-2, religious with it in fact, and like I've just said, it worked at club level. However, the personnel at England, you could argue, didn't suit it at the time. He played Scholes off the left, tried to fit Lampard and Gerrard into a midfield 2 pivot in a 4-4-2, was never really going to work. I think the only position it suited was maybe a Rooney and Michael Owen up front, or maybe one of the bigger lads in Peter Crouch. But in terms of the spine of that team, the defence was very solid, but the midfield in front of him rarely protected him. We needed a Carrick or a Scholes later on in his career to sit in that role and sweep up. Instead, you've got Lampard and Gerrard both at pretty much their prime in their careers, wanting to bomb forward and wanting to go and get goals. And I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of the ability of that squad in 2010 to the one in 2006 as well. So strong in terms of every position. There was competition, starters in their Premier League teams and some of the best talent in the league in general, yet it never really quite clicked. Both 2006 we came close, 2010 we were nowhere near. Let's not even talk about the howler from Rob Green, but I think the team's performance in general was really substandard. Now, it's important not to make excuses for the squad. Whether Capello is in charge or not, whether the system worked or not, you'd like to think that the players on that pitch had enough about them to cause problems for the opposition we faced and get further in them tournaments. However, it wasn't always the case. Pulling on that England shirt seemed to bring with it a change in mindset, a lack of confidence, and I don't really know why that happened. So then we come on to the morale, the team spirit of the England camp, and if you were to look at the mid to late 2000s. Let's take the 2008 Euros or 2010 World Cup again. There's been a lot of ex-pros that have come out and talked about how toxic that environment was, the atmosphere was when going to England, either just for an international break or to a tournament, because you've got the Chelsea clique, you've got the Man United clique, the Arsenal, the Liverpool clique, and it all became a little bit too much. They stuck with their brotherhood almost, that tribal nature crept into the camp. You've got Lampard, Terry and Ashley Cole and Joe Cole sitting together at lunch. You've got Gerrard and Carragher. You've got Gary Neville, Beckham and etc, etc. It became very toxic and they were competing against each other every week. Not directly, but in the same kind of, the mentality all season was to beat each other, beat their England teammates at club level. And I think Frank Lampard put it in an interview once and said he was always frustrated at Hernan Crespo, Argentinian player for Chelsea, a little while ago now, who was always buzzing to get away for international duty, was always so excited to meet up with his teammates and catch up, because they were playing all over the world. And you see that with a lot of other nations, some of the best players in the Premier League are not English. And that's because they seem to cast their net further adrift when it goes to playing in different countries and different leagues. So when they do come back together, and make up their international squad, they're all buying into it a little bit more. They haven't seen each other for months maybe, and they are very much a team. Whereas the England camp in previous years, they're battling it out against each other every week. I mean, if you're looking at the squad that's probably going to go to the Euros, Sancho is probably the only one selected, and maybe Bellingham, potentially, who doesn't play in the Premier League currently. What does that do in terms of that rivalry creeps in when you're actually supposed to be a team? I think it's important to note that Southgate has tried to change this. I don't know of any things in particular he's done, but the squad and the general kind of morale and spirit has definitely changed. I think you see that a lot of the younger lads now who maybe knew each other from different academies are still very good friends, and there's more of a kind of community in England rather than it being these individual tribes that just happen to pull on an England shirt for an international game. So credit to Southgate there, because I think that's been one of the big changes, not necessarily the playing style, but the togetherness of the group as a whole. So then we come on to one of the big factors, which is toxic press, toxic media attention. It's been a massive problem for England ever since I can remember, really, certainly as long as I've been alive and watching England. Whether it be the wives and girlfriends going away and staying in the hotel and the press following them because they're creating stories, or, now they don't seem to go away with the players, but is one of them doing something he shouldn't or getting up to trouble? Or, you look at Foden and Greenwood recently for England, getting in trouble, doing things they shouldn't be, almost like a lads on tour mentality, which they're still young lads, but things like that get blown up massively by the press, and that definitely doesn't help. But I think the one main thing that really affects England's progression is the expectation. Now, that sounds ridiculous. How can expectation drag a team down? But like I said, the life cycle of an England fan, you don't want to let yourself believe. You really think, I'm not going to do it next tournament. There's no point. We haven't performed. We haven't hit them standards for so long. What's the point in letting myself dream? But we all do it. In 2018, we weren't playing very well, but we kind of got easy draws and easy breaks and crept through, and then won on penalties, and we thought, wow, could we really? But the actual playing style of the team, the philosophy, was not great. Yet we all did believe, because that emotion, and I'll leave a link to my video on emotion up there, it just grabs a hold of you as an England fan. You know that you shouldn't get caught up in it, but you still do. And, it happens every single tournament. And that doesn't help the team, because we build them up so high, and the higher up you build them, the further they've got to fall. And that's definitely the case. And they get vilified in the press, and it's almost like they've disappointed every single one of us. And That's not fair. They do represent the country, I can appreciate that, but the expectation always leads to a bigger downfall. Now, I'm going to be a massive hypocrite. Despite saying all that, of course I'm hopeful. I think this is the strongest the squad looked for a while. Since 2010, 2006 era, I think this is definitely the most positive it's been. I think we're probably only really lacking another 8 or a centre-back, which could really maybe make us world-class, but we're really comfortable and assured in a lot of positions. So I'm going to get excited. Just imagine England win the World Cup. The country would go into lockdown. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you going to let yourself get led astray and believe as an England fan? Or is that really you done? Or are you just telling yourself that you're done? And, you know, this summer you're going to be in the pub singing Sweet Caroline with all your friends, thinking, could we really win it? But like I said, let me know in the comments down below. That is going to be all for this video. I hope you did enjoy it, and who knows, maybe you learnt something too. We all know what it's like to be an England fan after all, and I will see you in the next one.
Been crying so much to the poltergeist, trying to hold on to love, but it's frosted.